Join the Israel Vision team in a three-part series for a comprehensive look at what the top echelon of the Israeli government is saying. Israel Vision reports to you from the second annual Herzliya Conference on the balance of national strength and security for Israel. The overall topic at this year's conference was Israel in battle and in the international arena. The Herzliya Conference, hosted by the Interdisciplinary Center, focuses this year on the political and military struggle in which Israel finds itself in light of the major changes that have occurred in the Middle East, Central Asia, and in the USA. The conference brings together Israel's decision-making leadership, senior figures from the realms of foreign and security policy, economics, government, and top Israeli academics. In this program, Part 2, you'll meet Dan Meridor, a member of Knesset and an advisor to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. An experienced cabinet minister, he gives us a concise perspective on the successes and failures of Israel's quest for peace with her neighbors over the past 34 years. Next, you'll meet the current Chief of Staff of the Israeli Army, Lieutenant General Shaul Mofaz, who will bring us his balance sheet of the war that has raged in the Holy Land for the past 16 months. Finally, you'll hear a message from the National Security Advisor to President Bush, Dr. Condoleezza Rice.
In 1967, after the Six-Day War, deep-rooted changes were introduced into the Middle East. The external threat to Israel was changed. Israel's power was made clear to the Arabs, and many internal instabilities in Israel were brought to the surface. These instabilities, it seems, are getting bigger. Right versus left, secular versus religious. Since then, we've had a series of arrangements. The first in 1970 with King Hussein of Jordan, with whom we share the longest border. It was not a formal arrangement, but it should be said that for the first time an Arab leader could reach an agreement with us, later becoming openly friendly with us.
Begin the Sadat.
The second agreement was in 1979 between Prime Minister Begin and President Sadat. That was clearly the most significant breakthrough. However, what's happening between Israel and Egypt now is not peace like between France and Germany. It's much less, but still, this brought about far-reaching changes in the region. In 1991 in Madrid, exactly 10 years ago, was another breakthrough. In 1993, the Oslo Accords were the next step, and I can sum it up briefly by saying that there was a true undertaking to reach an agreement. The opinion held by many that we could just go on as is was shattered. This in no way was peace discussions for territory. Oslo was an agreement saying that I'll bring the enemy in closer and empower it, give it arms, and in that way, later the enemy will agree to negotiate with me. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made any sense to make the moves that were made. The question as to whether or not it failed is actually still open-ended. In 1994, we had an agreement with Jordan that formalized the previous informal agreements. This was a breakthrough as well. Then there were concerted efforts vis-a-vis Syria. Rabin, Peres, Barak, and Netanyahu all tried to hold talks with Syria about the Golan, but Assad rejected these talks.
כל הגולן, אבל נדחו על ידי הנשיא אסד. במקביל היו הסדרים, הייתי אומר, קטנים. הסדר יחסי עם מרוקו, עם טוניסיה, חלק מדינות...
There were agreements with Tunisia, Morocco as well, and some Gulf states.
נגיע לפרשת דרכים.
In 2000, we came to a crossroads at Camp David and Israel's redeployment on the Lebanese border, which was a reality-changing unilateral action. In short, there was a very positive trend among some Arab states, if not all, of coming to terms with Israel's existence, if not justifying Zionism. I think it was a classic maneuver of realpolitik, stemming from a realization of Israel's power. Contradictory to what one might have thought, that the Arab powers would have brought a total rejection of Israel, there has been a rapprochement and coming to terms with Israel's existence up to 2000.
העוצמה הכלכלית, המדינית, הבהירה שכנראה צריך להשלים עם השכן הזה. זה היה קו חיובי שהגיע עד 2000.
In July 2000, a Camp David summit was held, and then again at Taba. There was a heroic, though aborted, attempt to end the conflict with the Palestinians. Anyone seeking to construct the future has to take this into account, and disregarding it would be a mistake. The Palestinians, which are the crux of the matter in our perception, it's perhaps the very heart of the conflict. I say perhaps because maybe the conflict is more deep-seated. It may be religious or fundamentalist, but the Palestinian issue in any case is very important. I'd like to make a point that I think is not internalized sufficiently in Israel. Let's go back to '67. Left and right, two political parties emerged in Israel, the Doves and the Hawks. One party thought Israel should withdraw from the territories. The other thought that we should annex the territories. And neither was done. This is very interesting. If you had asked anyone in 1967 if we can just leave things as they are, nobody would have agreed, because it is not a natural situation. It's not a steady state situation. It's a situation that one cannot live with. Arnon Sofer is here, and he'll probably elaborate on that. But even someone like me, who never went on with statistics and mathematics after high school, the figures are crystal clear. West of the Jordan River, there will be the same number of Jews and Arabs in a number of years. People say, but they don't have the vote. I don't want to say who said that and in which office. However, we are effectively ruling the territories. Even in Nablus, we are the rulers, even if it's only enclaves. It means that we're responsible for it. The more we stay there, the more we're losing what Zionism defined as a Jewish democratic state. That would cease to exist. It's not a question facing us in the next 100 years. This will happen in just a few short years. Leaving the situation as is becomes dangerous even without exchange of fire. In fact, even more dangerous, because then the illusion of calm perpetuates itself. If I'm right and Arafat agrees with me, we'll never reach an agreement. It's better for him not to reach an agreement. The Palestinian womb will triumph. If this happens, we won't be able to reach a comprehensive agreement. The most dangerous option is leaving the situation as is, and we'll see in 3 or 4 years, it's already happening now, how dangerous that is. Having everything together is simply impossible. I don't know if we could have developed certain things, but we didn't. The hatred is simply intensifying, and it is clear to us all that we won't be able to live together. It's imperative that we not leave the situation as is.
Is this conference relative or relevant, as you said? And secondly, what can non-Jews in the world do to help Israel right now?
Well, the conference is relevant. The conference may be relevant because important people deal with Israeli security are sitting together trying to discuss the most important things for Israeli security. People who are Christians, non-Jews, can help if they stand by the truth. And the truth is that Israel is being attacked by its enemies, and Israel defends itself. And when this voice is heard not only by Jews, but by all good people who have the courage to say the truth, It helps a lot, and I've found this reaction. Many people in the United States, which I just returned from, I think there's quite a wide support for Israel in the public there.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
This confrontation that has been forced upon us is the result of a strategic choice made by the Palestinians when they chose the road to violence and terrorism in order to obtain their political goals. I think that the reasons why they chose this route is part and parcel of the Palestinian rationale, which is, first, that they are unsatisfied with the political process, and they realize that they will not accomplish all of their goals through negotiations. They will not have a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders, and having Jerusalem as their capital, and they will not get the right of return. Basically, that is why they chose the route of terrorism. Their rationale is that terrorism pays. They speculate that the shedding of blood of Israelis will lead to a change in Israeli strategic perception and our long-term ideas. There is no doubt that the Palestinians believe that terrorism pays, and that is one of their main perceptions. They utilize the fact that the world perceives them as the victim, that is, the power of being weak. The Palestinian leaders feel that, over time, the multiple of the demographic balance and the time factor will be on their side. In this campaign, terrorism plays a major role for the Palestinians in the form of suicide bombings, shootings, roadside bombings, and the like. There is extreme violence in this campaign. I would like to give you several statistics to illustrate this fact. So far, about 10,200 terror attacks have taken place since September last year, of which there were about 1,500 shootings at vehicles, about 5,400 shootings against military outposts, 500 shootings at settlements, 600 roadside bombs, and several dozen anti-tank missile strikes. These figures attest to the fact that this is a campaign that is being run by the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority, however, is not alone. There are many partners to this campaign. The Palestinians see this campaign as the last one. Their goals, as we understand, from how the Palestinian Authority is running this campaign, is to create a situation that will, when ignited, bring about the intervention of the international community. This escalation, the Palestinian Authority hopes, will bring about a scenario in which an international power becomes involved. They want to promote the notion that there can be no security with occupation, and to turn the current situation into a political process through violence and terrorism. They want to clarify to us that there will not be an end to this strife, and that any settlement signed with us is just temporary. They are trying as hard as possible to shatter the sense of confidence and security for the Israeli population, and to show us that they have staying power. I think that the path chosen by them is one of terrorism having three circles of influence. The first is led by the Palestinian opposition parties, the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad movements. The second circle is through the Tanzim people, who have been armed by the Palestinian Authority. Third, through the actual Palestinian security mechanisms. And I think, on a time axis, this differentiation between these three circles has been eroded, and we find more and more that the Fatah, Tanzim people who have become more extremists by joining Hamas and Jihad, are now all moving under the extremist umbrella. All Palestinian Authority groups are acting and being influenced by extremist thought. I know that at least 80 of those who were killed, Israelis, stem from the official security forces of the Palestinian Authority. In terms of their reference, they are the ones who should have fought against terror, but instead they are acting to support it. By using this extremist violence, they chose to control the flames of violence in accordance with their needs, namely, to get international sympathy for the Palestinian cause as being the underdog. The scope of the casualties and those murdered in the State of Israel was much lower than what the Palestinian Authority had hoped for, and lower than the targets that they had designated for themselves. Again, the aim of this campaign was to bring it into Israel proper, and therefore force the government and the IDF to use extreme tools to bring about a situation whereby they would once more be seen as the underdog. In doing so, they hope to give Israel a negative image in the international arena, facilitating international involvement, which is the Palestinian Authority's intention. המועד בו הותקפה ארצות הברית באותם פיגועי טרור בתאומים ובפנטגון. And then, on the 11th of September, the terror attacks on the Pentagon and in New York brought about a total revolution in the attitude towards terrorism and towards those countries that harbored terrorism. Ultimately, terror lost its most important element. That is, its inherent legitimacy that it once was perceived to have. The Palestinians tried to send a message into the international consciousness that the way they are fighting is, in fact, a legitimate process. That it is not the same terror as was used against the United States on the 11th of September 2001. Theirs is a totally different terror. This differentiation between the Bin Laden terror and their terror is political, legitimate, and therefore acceptable. We must identify that since September 11th, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad saw an opportunity to increase the chaos and anarchy. Their aim is to push Israel and the Palestinian Authority into the abyss. The mass terror strikes against Israel have become the method, goal, tactic, and strategy as one diabolical logic. Arafat believed that he could get away with this strategy by condemning the terrorists with words. He felt that declarations, rather than actually fighting terror, would suffice. I believe that after 15 months of such confrontation, I think that the cracks are beginning to show on the Palestinian side. I think that the Palestinian population sees that their leaders are leading it through a very dark tunnel, a tunnel with not so much as a flicker of light at the end of it. I can only say that even among the closest allies, the people around Arafat, there are voices being heard that want different kinds of leadership. But, as of yet, they haven't got the actual courage to stand up and oppose him and force him to turn his back on terrorism and return to the negotiating table. History shows that in this kind of fight, there is no knockout victory. In this conflict, it is not the sprinter, but the marathon runner who will win. Our hand does more than hold the sword. We reach out for peace. There is no other country or nation that wants peace, longs for peace, and prays for peace more than Israel. The secret is our national strength and our unity. This is what will help us win the campaign. I'd like to conclude by saying that with all the pain that this struggle involves, I do not know of any wars or struggles that do not involve pain. This fight is for our homes. This terrorism and violence is at our very doorstep. We have to be determined and stand strong because we have no choice. This is one of the most fateful struggles that we've ever had. And we understand that even if peace doesn't come soon, we must still go on living and do whatever we can in order to realize our historic right to live in peace and security in this land. Thank you.
Israel and the United States share the most important element of a relationship, and that is common values. And I want to say that you will never have a stronger friend. We understand that our security and that of Israel are linked inextricably. The President is committed to destroying terrorist networks of global reach. While this begins with Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan, he understands that we will not have fully finished our mission until terrorist networks of global reach are destroyed worldwide. The war in Afghanistan is going well, but there is still a lot of work to do there. Not only do we have to continue to work to make certain that Al-Qaeda is not a fighting force, but also that it is not a fighting force that can escape to other places, regenerate, and continue to wreak the kind of havoc that it has wreaked over the last several years. The President is committed to hunting down the Al-Qaeda leadership and bringing it to justice. That is not an easy matter. This is an area that they know well, and we know that it is going to take a very long time. But whether it takes a month or a year or several years, the United States is committed to bringing the Al-Qaeda network to an end and to bringing its leadership to justice. And we are looking hard, too, at what we must do to make certain that there are not other places that terrorism can regenerate itself. Now, I want to make very clear that we will not consider the war on terrorism done until other pockets of terrorism are also wiped out. The President has said that it is not possible to have good terrorists and bad terrorists. That is, you cannot hug Al-Qaeda or fight Al-Qaeda and hug Hamas or Hezbollah. And it is the President's intention to pressure all countries that sponsor terrorism, even if they support the war against Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan, to root out terrorism in their midst. I know this is a particularly difficult time for the people of the Middle East, and we want you to know that the United States stands with Israel in its fight against terrorism. The President has called squarely on Chairman Arafat to do what all responsible leaders must do, and that is to root out terrorism from its midst, to renounce terrorism as an instrument of any political motive, and to make certain that the security environment in the Middle East is one that can support the move toward peace. The President has a positive vision for a Middle East in which Israelis and Palestinians can live together in security and peace. But we cannot get to that positive vision until terrorism is no longer a weapon in the area. As to the question about American and Israeli military activities, we of course have very close coordination exercises and training in which we do get to know each other very well. We have, of course, very strong assistance programs to the Israeli Defense Forces, weapons assistance programs, and others. I think there are some areas in which we can even have closer cooperation. Let me use the example of missile defense. Missile defense is an area that has been undervalued until now because of the Cold War, when we thought of missile defenses as really only important in the context of thousands of nuclear weapons being launched between the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, when we look at rogue threats from places that are closer to Israel than they are to the United States, I think that the kind of cooperation that we've seen on Arrow might be a kind of hallmark of cooperation going further and into the future to help us on this very difficult but most important question of how to defend ourselves against a few ballistic missiles. Ballistic missile technology is ubiquitous now in many parts of the world and spreading. So this is an area of cooperation. Thus far, I think we have the right level of cooperation, but we are in constant discussion with our Israeli counterparts about how we might support each other's security goals.